Well, I don't have a whole lot to say today. I only have about 50 pages of notes. It won't take me more than an hour. I hope you have time. I feel like Miss Virginia. How many of you remember Miss Virginia? Yay! Somebody's in here almost as old as me. Miss Virginia had a mirror, and it didn't have an actual mirror in it. It was just the holder of the mirror. And she would say, romper, bumper, stomper, boo. Who do I see today? And probably rhymed, but I've forgotten, it's been so long. And she would then call out people. I see Pam, and I see Taryn, and I see Kathy, and I see Mama Edith, and I see Clara, and I see Bambi, and I see Aisha, and she would just call all of them, and I would sit in front of that television and say, Sandra, say Sandra, say Sandra. And there was never anybody on Romper Room by the name of Sandra, so she never saw me. But I was always captivated by that. I think that's why I love nostalgia. I really do. I love trips down memory lane. So that's where I came up with the title, Baseball, Hot Dogs, Motherhood, and Apple Pie. Now you're probably wondering, what does that have to, except for the word motherhood, what does that have to do with Mother's Day? Well, before I start, there was an opinion poll taken of all moms throughout the United States. And the mothers were asked a simple question: how do you spend, or how would you like to spend your free time? The results of the poll were never received because the mothers who were asked are laughing hysterically at the words free time. Mothers don't have free time. Now, you might think I'm just talking about mothers physically, mothers born in the female gender people who have children, offspring, grandchildren, but no, because there's a mother spirit in every single one of you. Whether you've ever had children, whether you've ever even wanted children, whether you've ever been a child, you revered your own mother, whatever path you've walked, there's a mother spirit within you. And that's what I want to talk about today. So baseball. Baseball started in the United States, in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. It was in the 19th century. Now, some of you may not know that hot dogs started in the 1800s on Coney Island in New York with the first Coney Island hot dog stand. And if you've ever had a Coney hot dog, you've lived. How many of you have had a Coney? You've lived. Different than your normal hot dog. Now, apple pie is my favorite pie. In fact, Lily Riley, I called Mama Lily, was a longtime member of this church. She passed away just a couple of years ago, and her children died when she was very young. So I sort of became a surrogate daughter. In fact, there are a few of us here who were sort of adopted by Mama Lily. Mama Lily would bake a cake for my birthday until she found out that my favorite dessert of choice is apple pie. And so a week before my birthday, she'd say, I'll have your pie ready on your birthday. And I really looked forward to that apple pie with a lot more cinnamon in it. I really like the cinnamon, the spice. So apple pie started with the early settlers in Delaware. There was an abundance of crab apples, but the apples we know, the Jonathans and the Galas and the Brayburns and all these variations of apples nowadays, the Golden Delicious, and those weren't around. They were crab apples, and they were in abundance. They were all over the place. And so the settlers made apple pies out of crab apples, and that became an American pastime. Now, this thing called motherhood, I mean, way back before baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie. Where did this concept come from? In World War II, when the American soldiers were being interviewed overseas, they were asked the same question: what do you miss most about home? And inevitably, they would say baseball, hot dogs, motherhood, and apple pie. And that became an idiom. We say it a lot. What's more American than baseball, hot dogs, motherhood and apple pie. Well, actually, it's no longer American, it's universal. It didn't just start there. The Greeks and the Romans have always celebrated the feminine goddesses of the centuries, of the ages. In fact, 250 years before Christ, the Romans had a spring festival honoring the goddesses. And then in the UK, the British started this Mothering Sunday. But in the 19th century, Mothering Sunday sort of disappeared, and the American troops from World War II revived it after the war and began to celebrate Mother's Day in this country. In 1872, Julia Ward Howe, who you may know as the writer of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, started a celebration for mothers. Now, this celebration was a simple honoring of mothers called on June 2nd, and it was in Boston only. And then some years later, a woman by the name of Anna Jarvis, who revered her own mother, never had any children of her own, and decided that she wanted her church to recognize motherhood. And so she approached her pastor, and on the second Sunday of May in 1908, May 10th, 1908, the pastor held the first service honoring all mothers. Now, Julia did something else. Her mother had passed on, and her mother's favorite flower was the carnation. And so everyone in the congregation received a carnation when they came into the church in memory of her mother and all mothers. That took on, especially in the more fundamentalist churches. And today, I'm pretty sure, where my mother and the rest of my family are worshiping at the Baptist church, they're handing out a flower in memory of mothers with a pin on it so that you can wear it. And that's why I chose to wear the flowered jacket today. My mother's favorite song is, "Give me my flowers while I can yet see the blooms. Speak kind words to me while I can yet hear them." That's what motherhood is all about. It's not about a special day that we go out and we buy, if we care enough to spend the very best or send the very best, we buy a Hallmark card. Or we buy a box of Russell Stover chocolates. Or we take our moms to dinner. It's bigger than that. It's an everyday celebration for motherhood. Now, I just heard a story by a woman who wrote a letter to her pastor. She said she's a non-mom, about a mother who's a friend of hers who said she does not come to church on Mother's Day because it makes her feel bad, because she's not a mother. And there are others who don't celebrate Mother's Day because they didn't like their mothers. Or maybe their mothers gave birth to them, but they weren't the ones to rear them. So they carry with them some unforgiveness, some blame. Well, Mother's Day is about forgiveness. It is about unconditional love. There's a story in the Bible. In fact, there's several. There are 300 references to the word mother in the Holy Bible. And using the Bible as a textbook, which Unity does, we can take some lessons from those stories. Now, one of those stories is about Jochebed. You may never have heard of Jochebed, but you have heard of one of her sons who was very famous. Her 3 children were Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. The Pharaoh had issued an edict that all Hebrew male babies should be killed. And Jochebed hid Moses for 3 months. But as Moses got bigger and more rambunctious, she knew she had to take other measures to keep him safe. So Jochebed crafted this idea to create a basket out of reeds. And then she slathered the beneath side of the basket with tar to make it waterproof. Then she set the basket with Moses in it on the edge of the Nile River and waited for Pharaoh's daughter to come and take her bath. hoping and having the faith that God would protect her baby and give the Pharaoh's daughter the idea of having mercy on this innocent child. And just like Jochebed had expected, the Pharaoh's daughter was taking her bath and noticed this basket. Went over to the basket and saw there was a baby in it. She didn't have any children. And so she took this baby, thinking it was an orphan, into her home. Now, this is about wisdom and unconditional love. Think of the faith that you would have to have and the wisdom to give your child up so that the child could have a better life. And there may be some of you in this congregation today who've had to do that. And so Miriam, being the daughter of Jochebed and as wise as her mother, happened to be a handmaiden for Pharaoh's daughter. And she got an idea. She proposed to Pharaoh's daughter that the baby would need a nursemaid and that she knew just the person who could handle the job, Jochebed. Now, she never told Pharaoh's daughter that Jochebed was her mother or the baby's mother, but Jochebed got the job. And for 7 years, Jochebed took care of Moses. Now, it's said in Scripture that that may be the reason that Moses had such a gentle spirit, because of his mother. Think of the courage that it took to give that baby up. The unselfishness, knowing that this child could be spared, and the hole that this might have left in Jochebed's heart, were it not for the opportunity to be side by side with Moses for the first years of his life. There are those here today and those watching who don't want to celebrate Mother's Day for various reasons. But it's not a celebration of gender. It's bigger than that. I know men who are single parents who do a great job of mothering. It's not unusual nowadays for the men to take care of the children, to be nurturing. Back in the days of Romper Room, they probably would have been looked at a little bit funny. But we know better today. All of us have a male and female nature, some more pronounced than others, but we all have that deep, caring, abiding love within us. And when we let go of the social norms that tell us that we have to behave this way, or we have to look this way, or we have to act this way, then we can allow our true selves to emerge and be the loving, nurturing mothers that all of us have inside. The stories are plenty. And I'm sure you've heard of this story. Now, this particular story in the Bible, and there are lots of them. I think I covered about 8 or 9 women in the Bible. And this particular story is about a mother who stood at the foot of a cross as her son was being crucified. You've heard the story. But the story's deeper than that. The part we overlook is when Jesus says, "Mother, behold thy son." And many of us don't go to the next verse because he was talking about his cousin John, his mother's nephew, one of the disciples, who stood next to his mother. "Mother, behold thy son." And then he said to John, "Take care of my mother." And John spent the rest of Mary's life making sure that he fulfilled that promise. That's what the gift of motherhood is about. It's not about gender. It's about fulfilling the promise of who and whose you are, where you come from. Now, I have a true story I want to share with you from my own personal experience. It didn't happen to me, but it felt like it. And I called my friend Brenda today and asked permission if I could tell this story. Brenda and I had become friends through our work. We both worked for the Federal Aviation Administration. And we had an event that we were participating in out of town. When I arrived at Brenda's house to pick her up, she was in tears. And when I finally got her to calm down, she told me that she had spent thousands of dollars trying to find her birth mother. So she began to tell me the story. Brenda's father and mother were stationed in Germany. And Brenda was born in Germany. She was 9 years old when the family moved to the United States from Germany. She remembers some things about Germany. She remembers playing with a little boy that they often said she looked like. Her parents were African American. She remembers this family that they would visit a lot, that treated her so well, this German family. When Brenda was 9 years old is when they moved to the States. When Brenda was 18, she was enlisting in the military. And you know, the military digs deep into your past. And so they found that Brenda did not have a United States birth certificate. And so when Brenda asked her parents about it, they were real sheepish. Brenda learned that she had been adopted in Germany. But her parents wouldn't share any information. So Brenda spent years after her adopted mother passed away trying to find her birth mother so she could understand better who she was. She said all her life she felt a little bit disconnected, a little bit off-center, although she grew up in a loving home. Well, when Brenda and I got together, I started helping her write letters. She knew Germany was one of the points of exit. And so Brenda called me one day and she said, I got a response. It's all in German, but I got a response. She was 9 when she moved away from Germany, so she knew German pretty well, but it was more than what she could comprehend. And so we found someone who could interpret. Her mother's name was Ruth, and that was it. They had tracked her to a certain time in Germany, and then she sort of disappeared off the map. And so Brenda was at another wall, and she was in tears. One day I get a phone call from Brenda, and she says, I got a phone call today from this young man by the name of Henry in Ohio. He's been looking for me. It was Brenda's only blood sibling, and it was a young man when they were children in Germany that she used to play with. Her mother, Ruth, had been looking for her for years, and Ruth was dying of cancer. Her dying wish was that Henry would turn heaven and earth to find Brenda. Talk about a reunion. I don't know who was crying more, me or Brenda, because she had now found her roots. So she went to Ohio and met Ruth for the first time. They had a long visit. Ruth brought out pictures, and memories started to flood back to Brenda. And Ruth said that she and Brenda's adopted mom had been in touch with each other until Brenda was about 14, and then the communication stopped. This mother had never stopped looking for Brenda. It seems Brenda's whole world opened up after that. Things just started to open for her in her life. The forgiveness, the unconditional love. When Ruth explained to her that she already had Henry by another serviceman, and her parents absolutely refused to help her take care of Brenda, she had to give Brenda to a good family, and she found a good family when Brenda was 3 weeks old. If you meet Brenda today, you would never know that something like that had occurred in her life. Brenda doesn't have any children, but she's one of the greatest mothers I have ever known. She adopts everyone's children and their grandchildren. She has so much love to give. So things sometimes happen in our lives that we think are tragic or hurtful, but they're for our best and highest good if we just let them be. Sit back and see how this is going to turn out. Just let it be. So I'm very proud of Brenda. Charles Fillmore, in The Revealing Word, speaks of motherhood. And I want to read you exactly what he says. Charles Fillmore is the co-founder of Unity. And the words we speak are so important. And the information that we get from those words. When we think of mother, we often think of the woman in our lives, the woman who bore us, who brought us into the world. But Fillmore calls this divine motherhood, the brooding, nourishing element of divine mind or God, in which spiritual ideals are brought into fruition. You notice something about that definition? It doesn't say male or female. Divine motherhood. Divine motherhood. Whether you've had children or not, whether you were reared by your own mother or not, you have divine motherhood in you. You have the faith, the wisdom, and the unconditional love that exemplifies motherhood. There were two women, and I'll close with this, who shared the same house. This is also found in Scripture. And these two women had a baby, and one of the babies died. So one woman switched babies. She wanted a baby so bad. When the other mother was sleeping, she took her baby and put the dead baby beside her. When the mother woke up, she realized this was not her baby, and an argument ensued. The guards and everybody came, and finally they couldn't decide. Nobody knew whose baby it was. So they took her to the wisest king in the world, King Solomon. King Solomon listened to them, and after he'd heard enough, he said to his guard, "Go get a knife and cut the baby in half. Give this half to her and give this half to her." That seems mean, doesn't it? Cut the baby in half? One of the women showed no emotion, but the other one fell to her knees, crying profusely, begging him, just give him to her. Just give the baby to her. And King Solomon knew who the real mother was. It has nothing to do with birth. It has to do with love. With love. You don't have to birth someone into the world to love them unconditionally. And you can love yourself. You can mother yourself. That is love. As Oprah says, biology is the least of what makes someone a mother. And so with that, let us take these thoughts of motherhood into our consciousness.
Amen.
Let us take a deep, relaxing breath. Find a comfortable position in your chairs. Close your eyes as you feel led. And know that the Spirit of God is within you. It is neither here nor there. It is only within. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, "What lies before me and what lies behind me are small matters to what lies within me. Within me is the mothering spirit of love. I am love."
Myrtle Fillmore, mother of Unity, says the silence is kind of stillness, a place of retreat, that when entered we may know the truth. And we go into the silence by observing these simple words: be still and know. Be still and know. Be still and know. In the silence. In the silence. In the silence. As we return to this place and time, let us feel the mothering spirit from within. Let us know that all is right with our world. Gentle woman, quiet light, morning star, so strong and bright. Gentle woman,